Hello everyone. I apologize immensely for not posting for over a week. I have been very busy. Now I am back to publishing again. Thank you for your understanding, and I appreciate your continued support. Let's waste no time. We are back to West Africa, Nigeria to be precise.
Congress of the National Assembly, the protesters call on the President of the Senate to address their demands. The President of the NLC then hands over a letter to the National Assembly after making a speech.
There is hunger in this land. All over, in all the states of the Federation, NLC is sounding it loud and clear that Nigerians are hungry. That our currency is weak. That transportation is high. That there is insecurity everywhere. That there is unemployment everywhere. That the wage is insufficient.
The protesters are demanding, among other things, that the federal and state government provide subsidy for farmers to boost food production, put an immediate halt to the dollarization of the economy, abandon all IMF and World Bank policies, and pay all outstanding arrears of salaries and pensions of workers. The National Assembly leadership is promising to accelerate debate and actions on the demands.
I want to assure you that this letter will be discussed immediately at the plenary session. The leadership of the National Assembly feels what you feel. By the grace of God, you will see our reaction.
In a related development, dozens of workers in many northern states comply with the directives of the NLC to protest in their states. In Kaduna, Niger, Kwara, Kano, Plateau, Taraba, Katsina, and Sokoto state, workers marched through the streets to protest the rising cost of living.
This is a protest with simple message. We are saying there is hunger in the land. There is insecurity in the land, and people are not happy. These are the three messages.
Protesters sing solidarity songs and display placards with messages summarizing their demands.
We are protesting against the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for so many reasons. One,
The highest figure in nearly 3 decades. The cost of food has risen even more, with food inflation at 35%. 2. Stagnant minimum wage. Despite rising prices, the monthly minimum wage has remained unchanged since 2019 at 30,000 naira, which is equivalent to £14.97 in British sterling. 3. Fuel subsidy removal. President Bola Tinubu's reforms included ending the long-standing fuel subsidy. While this move aimed to redirect funds, it led to a significant increase in petrol prices, affecting transportation and energy costs. 4. The impact on citizens. Many Nigerians are struggling to afford basic necessities. Some are rationing food, and in some parts of the north, some people are consuming rice that is typically discarded during milling. 5. The economic crisis remains a pressing issue, and citizens are hoping for relief through further reforms and policies. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has said, economic reforms will continue despite increasing hardships that have fueled public anger and frustration, and promised to send an executive bill to Parliament soon to set a new minimum wage. Think about it. Nigeria with its oil should be as rich as United Arab Amirates. But no. We are talking Africa. All riches and good life is the reserve of the select few. Sadly, you will find this uncaring behavior in the majority of African leaders. Tinubu, who came to power a year ago, removed a decades-old petrol subsidy that kept the prices artificially low and devalued the currency, sending inflation soaring to 33% in April, its highest level in nearly 3 decades, and eroding incomes. President Tinubu has acknowledged hardships caused by reforms, which include higher interest rates and the partial removal of electricity subsidies. But he said this would create a stronger foundation for future growth. He went on to say, our economy has been in desperate need of reform for decades. It has been unbalanced because it was built on the flawed foundation of over-reliance on revenues from the exploitation of oil. The president also promised to listen to the people. He said he will never turn his back to the people. While the president is talking, poor Nigerians continue to grapple with the worst cost of living crisis in decades, and labor unions are going ahead with the strikes to pressure the government to agree a new monthly minimum wage. The government has offered to double the minimum wage to 62,000 naira, which is equivalent to 31 British pounds a month against labor demands of 250,000 naira. The president said his government had negotiated in good faith. The last minimum wage was set in 2019. The minimum wage in Nigeria is based on monthly income with an average working period of 8 hours daily and 5 days weekly. With all the resources that Africa has got, surely, if well managed, Africa would be much richer than Europe and America. It is very sad to see Africa always poor and always begging for Western help. Some people may dislike Gaddafi, but at least he did take care of the majority of the Libyans. Cheaper housing, free education, and free health. People in Africa's most populous nation are suffering as the price of everything has skyrocketed out of reach for many. Worst economic crisis in decades, and not to mention a national currency in freefall and millions of people struggling to buy food. Only a few years ago, Nigeria was the biggest economy after South Africa. And now, Nigeria is projected to drop down to the 5th or 6th place this year. The pain of suffering is widespread. Hospitals are overrun with women racked by spasms from calcium deficiencies. On an emergency room in northern Nigeria, 3 women were convulsing in painful spasms. Cases of hypocalcemia caused by malnutrition have been reported. Now, with many unable to afford food, the hospital will be seeing multiple cases every day. The doctors offer prescriptions according how much the patients can afford. For instance, baobab leaves or tiger nuts for the poor, boiled up bones for the slightly better off. He laughed at the suggestion that anyone could afford milk. Cassava, the cheapest staple in many parts of Nigeria, has tripled in price. Nigeria is a country heavily dependent on imported petroleum products, despite being a major oil producer. After years of underinvestment and mismanagement, its state refineries hardly produce any gasoline. Many Nigerians are going bankrupt or working multiple jobs to stay afloat. In some parts of Nigeria, it's gotten so dire that there have been several deadly stampedes for free or discounted rice distributed by the government, including one in March at a university in the central state of Nasarawa where 7 students were killed. The vast majority of Nigerians work in informal sector, no salaries, unions, or safety net. And because of the skyrocketing inflation, many can no longer afford basics, like food. Mr. Bolo Tinubu promised to create 1 million jobs and quadruple the size of the economy within a decade, but has not said how. There's very little clarity, if any, on where the economy is headed or what the priorities are. Nigeria cannot produce enough food for its growing population. Food imports rise 11% annually. Nigerians have become paupers almost overnight. They are searching for anything that might hold its value. A lot of people believe the crisis to be rooted in 2 major changes implemented by the president. The removal of fuel subsidies and the floating of the currency, which together have caused major price rises. Fuel hikes in Nigeria can also be attributed to the deregulation of the petroleum sector. The Nigerian government, in an attempt to reduce the burden of subsidies on its budget, has gradually moved towards a market-driven pricing system. This means that fuel prices are now largely determined by the global oil prices and exchange rates. Another cause is the country's heavy reliance on imported refined petroleum products. Despite being one of the world's largest world producers, Nigeria lacks the refining capacity to meet its domestic fuel needs. This situation makes the country susceptible to fluctuations in international oil prices and foreign exchange rates. Infrastructure challenges, such as pipeline vandalism and inadequate storage facilities, also contribute to fuel price hikes. These issues always lead to fuel supply shortages, which in turn drive up prices. Additionally, corruption and inefficiencies in the oil sector can lead to artificial price increases. The fuel hikes in Nigeria are far-reaching. For average Nigerian, increased fuel prices mean higher transportation costs, as most vehicles and generators in the country are run on petrol or diesel. This can mean a rise in the cost of goods and services, as businesses pass on their increased operating costs to consumers. Fuel price hikes can also exacerbate economic inequality. The poorest households, who spend larger proportion of their income on energy, are hit hardest by price increases. This can lead to social unrest. Finally, high fuel prices can have negative implications for the country's economic growth. They can deter investment in the transport and manufacturing sectors, which are crucial for job creation and economic diversification. Then, there is the black market for fuel in Nigeria is a significant and complex issue. This unofficial black arises due to the fuel scarcity in the country, which is often caused by factors such as inadequate refining capacity, pipeline vandalism, and corruption. In this market, prices are a lot higher than the official rates due to the risks and costs associated with illegal trading. Black market fuel prices in Nigeria fluctuate based on the fuel availability. During the periods of scarcity, prices can skyrocket, sometimes doubling or tripling the official price. However, during periods of relative abundance, black market prices may be closer to the official rates. It is important to note that these prices are regulated and can vary significantly from one location to another. Efforts to curb the black market for fuel in Nigeria have been long going, with varying degrees of success. Thank you so much for your time.